we are continuing. We're moving on. No rest for the wicked, as they say. There should be a somewhere another slide, but I do not know if you can see it. Who cares? Let's hand it over immediately. So we teamed up for this talk with our dear friends from Water and Music. So if you're interested in anything in relation of the music industry, either Web2 or Web3, Water and Music is the key resource on the internet for that. And we wanted to look into something that also, Harm already mentioned, the importance of metadata in particular, because you might not consider metadata that important to your music listening experience, but actually it is the decisive factor between who gets paid, who gets attributed, and who might, be able to continue doing these beautiful things. And the panel that we have is a panel of builders, of engineers, of lawyers, and music industry professionals. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to this beautiful group of people and to Brooke in particular from Water Music, who is going to be hosting that. Have fun, friends.
All right, thanks so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next panel. Yeah, this is great to be here. And I'm joined by a really, really great group. And I'm going to try not to talk too much, but at least that was a nice intro. But yes, hi, I'm Brooke Jackson. I represent Water and Music, which is a music and tech research newsletter and now DAO as of last year. And yeah, we do research on areas where music and tech meet. We attempt to analyze and connect the dots in areas and, demystify some of these places, such as Web3. So a lot of what I'm doing as a researcher and biz ops person at Water and Music is looking at music NFTs. And we have a big database that you can find, the paid members of our newsletter and DAO can find at waterandmusic.com. We have a database that tracks as best as possible, which is part of what we're going to be talking about here. What's going on in music NFTs. I've been tracking these for about 1.5 years alongside our founder, Sherry Hu, and a lot of collaborators as part of our DAO. And yeah, have stumbled upon the problem of metadata in just trying to analyze what's going on. So we look at primarily primary sales and do analysis of what is happening in the overarching trends of the market. And it's tough. So I'm glad to be talking to people who are behind the scenes, much more, technologically capable than I am, that are actually putting this out there. So I'm going to hand it over. Let's just go around. I'll just start with, I'll start to my right here. So you can tell us a little bit about what project you're involved with, and a little bit what problem you're looking to solve in music with Web3. So Ahmed, I see you first. So why don't you start?
Hey folks, thank you, Brooke. I appreciate the intro. Happy to be here. My name is Ahmed Mutahadir. I am a data engineer by background, but I'm a DJ and producer as well. The project I'm involved in, I'm part of a community called the Underground Violet Rave. So just a group of artists, DJs, graphic artists, all kinds, just creatives who came together for music, honestly. And brought my technical background. I was like, hey, you guys realize we could be doing a lot more stuff if we had metadata. So started digging into that. Did a Zora hackathon project where I looked at the major publication platforms, looked at their metadata standards, and kind of did like a state of metadata, and just started a conversation in our community and on the broader music NFT community, because I believe that standard adoption is important for every single industry. Just go look at ISO standards, for example, if you want a clear example. And I think that particularly with music NFTs, developing a standard and having wide adoption is mutually beneficial for everyone. And it's inevitable, because with the adoption of a standard comes the establishing of secondary microservices, and money talks. So I'm excited to see where the space goes, and I'm incredibly honored to just be a part of the conversation with so many bright individuals.
Great, thanks so much. All right, Kyle number 1, Kyle Dhillon, why don't you go ahead with our pitch?
Sure thing. Thanks so much. I'm Kyle. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at Arpeggi Labs. We started Arpeggi back in October, and we basically created the first fully on-chain music creation platform, similar to the last talk with Harm, actually, but for music. And early on, we kind of started thinking about how do we represent the contributors to a song on the blockchain, and not just how do we replicate sort of the existing standards that we see with music, things that are stored in PRO, like that PROs handle and traditional publishing systems, but how do we actually think about new ways to represent contributors to music and store that and build interesting systems on top of that. So things we're really interested in are we basically developed a on-chain protocol for music creation, as well as a platform you can use called Arpeggi Studio. So artists can make songs in the browser, and all of the components of a song, including the samples that were used in that song, as well as any any stems that were remixed from another song, all of the components of that song are tracked, and basically you could build really cool systems on top of this for distributing splits to all of the contributors. Artists of songs will be incentivized to allow others to remix their songs permissionlessly. That's sort of one of the theses that we have at Arpeggi. So obviously this touches a lot about metadata, and it's it's a little bit different than I think the traditional way we think about metadata as just being like who made the song at what time. Instead, we're thinking about how do we literally change the way that we think about composition and collaboration, essentially, in sort of a day and age where remixing and reuse is so common, and it is kind of the new paradigm for creating. Yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Thank you, Kyle. Okay, over to the other Kyle at LexDAO. Introduce yourself quick.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kyle. I'm one of the core contributors at LexDAO, and LexDAO is the International Legal Engineer Guild. So we're lawyers who code. I'm non-practicing, and whatever I say is not legal advice. So yeah, anyway, what I'm doing is we've got this Web3 Music Coalition, and we offer grants to DAOs, Web3 DAOs, to go to traditional music events like Music Biz Conference, and we're also friends of Music Biz Conference, so opportunities to speak at Music Biz Conference. And then we only started in March, but we'll expand and offer more grants for more opportunities to bridge Web3 music with traditional music. The main thing we're working on right now is, Web3, I guess Music Coalition, it's technically a sub-DAO of Ethereum Magicians. So we spend quite a bit of time with them, as well as the cat herders. So very much into EIP. And at the moment, we're building up a group of members for DDEX. And then DDEX is going to have, they already have a working group of traditional music industry. And so then we'll have some Web3, and hopefully, I don't know what standards they'll come up with. I'm just kind of a liaison, but I assume the standards will bridge between DDEX's kind of one-to-one private database system into Ethereum, so an Oracle type of thing. I saw what Jack did with Web5. That was kind of cool. I don't know how related it'll be to that, but that's pretty much what I'm up to. And oh yeah, my background way when was in enterprise music publishing, which now Anthem Entertainment. And so I'm personally really interested in the new royalties that are happening in this space. Resale is very exciting, and from my previous experience, we kind of expanded neighboring rights, and that's now quite lucrative, and everyone kind of knows about that these days. And so resales like that, but then who knows what other rights these new markets will produce that will add more diversification of revenues for the artists. And I am also very interested in making sure creators get credits, and that's a harder problem. That's edge computing and all that, but I've got robotics pet project that's ultimately going to come back around for that. But yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Amazing. Thanks, Kyle. And last but not least, AJ.
Hey guys, and thanks for having us. So AJ Washington here. I'm the founder of Float DAO. Float is a music curation protocol. with a DAO built on top of it. Our mission is to bring the best music on the internet to Web3 and introduce Web3 technology and NFTs to artists as a way for them to, make sustainable living and, earn a living wage from their work. Our primary goal is to help artists maximize the value of their work and the reach. And I think, when we think about metadata not only, like, Mikhail suggested at the top, helps in attribution and payment, but also in discovery. And discovery is a very big part of our mission, helping talented artists be seen, be heard. And this discussion is core to that being available to artists. And so we're very interested and invested in helping establish a metadata standard, helping push that, helping alleviate any challenges and roadblocks that may be in the way of that being a realization.
Amazing. All right, let's dig into it. So I said to you guys before we started, I would love to see by the end of this thing, which if we could come to a consensus on, one, what the problems are with metadata as they stand today, what your thoughts are on how we could actually start to solve these problems. And, that could be a big ideal kind of thing, or just literally like, how do we connect stakeholders in this place to you or to leaders that are actually starting to take action on this. So to start with that, let's just hear, where do you guys think the biggest problem is right now as it stands today to getting good, solid metadata standards for NFTs in the music space? And I'll just open it up. You guys, I won't call.
I can start if that's okay. Get us going here. I wrote a couple things down, but I think to keep it relevant, I think the most important thing is education. Especially when we start engaging artists and talking to them about like metadata, like, hey, what's metadata used for? Usually it involves artificial intelligence or something like that. It's like, no, man, do you like Spotify and Apple Music? Do you like seeing recommended songs? Are you a DJ who digs for music on Bandcamp or SoundCloud? On Bandcamp, you can go and, hey, show me hip hop from Tokyo, Japan, and it'll give you songs that are hip hop in Tokyo, Japan. And imagine if we had metadata for all of that music, the depth of research we could do on sound selection. That's what was missing for me. That's why I decided to do the project. But what's important about the education piece is, when we look at the major publication platforms who are the faucets into this ecosystem, they're not adopting. They have the metadata standards, but on the user interface side, they're choosing not to allow people to populate that metadata standard. Very valid reason. When you go ask them, it's because it's a barrier of entry for artists. They see that huge metadata standard and they're like, whoa, I don't have like 3/4 of this. I'm not going to upload music. Fair enough. What I'm saying is, if you're an artist and I'm telling you that people are trying to build secondary services to get you paid based off of data that is published, you should start asking those publication platforms why you can't populate that data, and you should be asking for the option to populate that data yourself. And it's going to be an iterative process, and we're all building. So let's build.
Yeah, and I agree. I think really I think education is a barrier, but also, like Muta suggested, it's also how do we allow this to be an easy process for artists, or maybe alleviate the pressure on artists themselves to populate this information, and can we do it in a more decentralized way, right? And that's something that I think is in line with the ethos of Web3. I think there are incentive mechanisms that we could think about that would allow a broader population of folks who support artists, love music, understand the importance of this information being submitted to participate. And I think that's really the area of focus that we're really interested in exploring, is how can we make this a more communal process and create some sort of incentive that allows more people to get involved.
I kind of I was a part of this, I'm still a part of this Telegram chat called Music NFT Metadata Standards, and it's been really interesting to see the conversation in that channel evolve over the past few months. My understanding, based on following that channel, which has a lot of really engaged and interested folks who want to solve this problem, is that there's sort of two questions right now. There's actually two different conversations happening in parallel. One is sort of the traditional metadata conversation, which is really important, and it's kind of what Ahmed and AJ are talking about. How do we get really accurate information about the song, or the song specifically, and put that in a way that it can be shared across a bunch of different platforms, and aggregators can display songs using that information. I feel like that is a problem that a lot of people are working on interesting solutions for. Catalog and Mint Songs, I think in partnership with Water and Music, you guys just put out a standard that looks kind of similar to like an ISRC, which is sort of the traditional music industry standard. That's really exciting. There's a project called Noom, which is, I believe, an open source aggregator that's taking music from sound.xyz catalog and basically massaging the data using its own pipeline, and then publishing that to a open source database as well. So that has its own sort of metadata standard there. And all this stuff is really important. However, I think like perhaps a more, I kind of think that eventually though, this question of like, how do we basically take the same standards that exist in Web 2 and apply them in Web 3 will get resolved somehow. Like either one metadata standard will dominate or one aggregator will dominate, most likely. But I think the thing that's really most up in the air and up for debate is the rights side. It's like the legal side of NFT music. I think that's the area that doesn't have an answer right now. And I think it's probably the biggest challenge, the biggest obstacle for traditional artists, especially ones who are signed to record labels, for putting their music on chain. Basically, like, what does it mean if I create an NFT for my song? What are the legal rights associated with that? And how do you codify those rights into that metadata of that NFT? Like, can I make a music NFT that actually has these rights associated with it? For example, fractionalization of royalties. What if I don't want to do that? What if I just want to make a pure collectible? Is there like a standardized way that we can represent that information on chain? And I think that's the area where we can really change music permanently, as opposed to just like, getting the same kind of data that we already have for Web 2 music for Web 3. Now let's actually, I'm curious actually to hear about what Kyle, since you're a lawyer, but I know it's not legal advice. Curious what you think about the rights side of this equation.
Yeah, your assessment is great. The one thing I would add to that, kind of the first track, is tags are really useful. So we've kind of had discussions about what's the core metadata, the absolute required metadata. So as AJ said, right, some people will just kind of not do it if there's too much. So what's absolutely minimum, like who are the creators on it? And that one's really tough too, especially because say some creators left out, or they're inputted incorrectly. So then how is that updated, especially in an immutable chain? So that the immutability issue in that first track, as well as stuff that is metadata that's yet to be developed, because one of the cool things about the NFT space is there's so much creativity happening that just kind of categorizing that sort of secondary metadata as tags can be helpful. So BPM, I know, is kind of sometimes given its own, but perhaps it should be just more out of that tag thing. But in any case, yeah. So, but on the legal side, yeah, that's just a really hard problem. And so what we're discussing right now, which I think will be helpful for NFTs generally, is having a legal document standard, just period. So in Lifestyle, we're dealing with real property, not just copyright, lots of different types of associations. But yeah, I guess the legal community really is kind of figuring it out. I personally have a position where the NFT is a sui generis type of property, and it kind of should be kept separate from the other property. And I feel when that happens, the analysis is a little bit easier to understand, and sort of bundle of properties that where some other people, they'd rather not create a sui generis, and so see if our existing structures work, and so don't have to have a whole almost new area of property law develop. So even at that really low level, those legal questions are yet to be answered. But yeah, one of the things that will be, a catalog is an example of someone that's just kind of doing it on the ground with their splits and having that built in. So splits is a little bit easier than the other ones because same as resale, it's part of the what's compiled in the EVM. So it's kind of more practical than kind of where copyright often is statutory. So people have to understand the statute to apply it. And so that's another one of the reasons why I think NFTs should be a little bit separate, because NFTs are almost like returning to natural law, where it's possession is 9/10 of the law, that kind of thing. That doesn't really operate in copyright because it's statutory, but in physical, it really does matter. If I have my laptop physically here, that's, you know, then I'm possessing it or whatever. And so, yeah, so with the public-private key situation and people having control because they have that secret, which is kind of like a trade secret, then it does allow this interesting, I would almost say, tort-like nature for NFTs. But yeah, so anyway, but getting back to metadata more directly, I hopefully will have a metadata standard for legal documentation, and then something that should also be part of that is a UX where signatures are fairly, people understand that they're agreeing to something, that it actually feels like a signature, like in a traditional contract. And for copyright, that's really important. If the asset is transferred, it has to be in writing in quite a few territories. And so kernel communities, they're working on signature economy stuff. So that's one place that tech could happen. I feel like we're all kind of aware of what needs to be done, just have that patience of building it out. But it does seem like the overall narratives are going in the right direction. So I'm optimistic.
Are there any standards, Kyle, since it sounds like you're pretty optimistic about this, as you said, are there any places that you feel like are doing it really well right now that maybe we can get behind? I know it's been mentioned that OpenSea's standard is sort of the standard that everyone's using because they're the biggest, they were kind of first, and maybe that's not perfect for what we're doing with music specific NFTs, but yet we're trying to kind of cram in, you know, little proverbial square peg round hole kind of thing. Is that the right direction, or is there someone else who's doing it that that, you know, you're looking to, that's like, yeah, we've got the legal stuff doing really well. I mean, you mentioned catalog is doing it from the ground up, but is there any place where or maybe addressing the education aspect and getting the right data in to begin with? And then I'll have a follow-up question, but if I wanted to make sure we noted that if there's someone doing it really well, and maybe it's LexDAO.
Oh yeah, I mean, LexDAO started the process for a more general legal solution, but there is a distinction between the legal that is because it's part of a contract in the EVM, and then legal that is more, or there's that law as code thing, right? And so law as code, when legal can, it's that kind of legal, then there are already solutions there. But for instance, LexDAO has this thing called Kelly Down. It's a legal wrapper, so it's an LLC on top of that, and that is what is it? I think it's called wet code or something like that. There's dry code and wet codes. Wet codes, you know, human brains, and so that still needs to be built out quite a bit. And yeah, LexDAO is working on it. A few other areas, or a few other, I guess we call them legal engineers, are also working on that. But that one's still farther out. So the law that is getting built out, that's already built out to some extent already, is that law that can be encoded and has been encoded. But that's limited. It does also, though, again, open a whole new space of law like resale. So the for sale doctrine doesn't really matter so much because there's resale that's actually in the EVM. So it's there. So again, possession is kind of, it exists. So what are you going to do? Yeah, Zora, I believe, is, it seems like music NFTs, Zora has the potential to be where these API standards, and yeah, I would call them API standards. That's one of the reasons OpenSea is a leader. It's not just it's that people can secondary. So something like Spin App, they can call into OpenSea and grab the data. And so Zora has the potential for music. It seems to be the leader for those. I personally, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So as much as we can bring in DDEX standards, since that's already accepted, do so. And if Apple is in DDEX, Universal, Sony, all that. So if they, there's a possibility they work with Zora and OpenSea and all that to kind of set a platform standard, and that just happens. And that's especially important for things like resale, because these are opt-in, and I really like that EIP, the Ethereum standards, choose generally for opt-in, and DDEX also is deciding to join in on that and opt-in. That means though that what might happen practically is that sort of the big names that are already well established will kind of create enough critical mass that everyone does decide to opt in, and I'm really motivated to make sure that opt-in is as beneficial for the artists as possible, and seeing how performing rights organizations distribute royalties. There's a good chance that we actually will keep artists at the center of attention, and realize that they're the ones that make this stuff and why we're here in the first place. And yeah,
that's great. Thank you so much for that. And I think there's the tech side of things, and then I want to get back to also the education side of things, because I think a few of you have talked a little bit about that. And I think probably the idea of metadata or seeing a big standard is probably, yeah, a barrier to entry, a little intimidating. What are you doing in each of your projects, or what have you liked doing? I mean, Ahmed, you said that you dug into a project because you were trying to learn. AJ, I know we talked yesterday about the fact that probably a lot of the problems with metadata are not necessarily like because of blockchain, it's because of human error, right? So there's some education behind that. So how are you approaching with your projects, education, whether that be onboarding or artists that you're working with? And I suppose, Kyle, just understanding like what it means to break up a stem and how that affects future compositions. You can talk a little bit about what education is doing. Yeah, go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, I just figured out you could raise your hand. I had to try it out. I think leading through example, we have aggregators. Aggregators are a standard thing at this point, collecting whatever metadata, contract address, if there's any PRO metadata in there, which I think the catalog metadata standard has ISRC, just none of it's populated. So, the aggregator piece isn't a problem. I think the most important thing we can do now is lead by example and show people what we can do with aggregation. Because we can talk all day about, the future microservice ecosystem or whatever, but if there's no data to actually build these products that we're talking about, then it's kind of useless to talk about something that doesn't exist. So, with this small data set that we've been able to get, and, folks like Water and Music like you guys have been able to aggregate over time, I challenge all of our perception about the future of the music ecosystem and how it works. We're moving towards a services-oriented future, and if a platform makes a service that is able to power a powerful secondary music streaming service or music discovery service or music curating service, and people can get paid passively, we don't have to do any convincing. There's not, it's do you want to get paid money? Then adopt the standard, because there's microservices built on this, the same way that Zora operates, right? With the API. The APIs, we're saying we're going to make the data available to you, go build stuff with it because it's built on Zora. That's good for Zora, that's good for you. And so that's the future we're moving towards. So maybe a little bit of a radical opinion, but I think that with the right players involved, if we keep good hearts and we keep each other honest and we keep doing this in a community-oriented way, all the pieces will fall into place because money talks at the end of the day.
Yeah, AJ, you're doing a lot. Your whole pitch is about bringing music into Web3. So that's clearly educating artists on that. How are you talking about that, especially in terms of this more technical side of things?
Yeah, I mean, this is metadata is a boring but important topic, right? And it's nothing, we don't say metadata ever to artists. I think like Ahmed saying, we talk in terms of dollars, right? Artists come to us because they want capital and they want distribution, right? And I think it's, both those things are solved by metadata as an underpinning to making the music more valuable, one, right? Because it's more usable, as Ahmed was saying. If you have robust metadata, on a song, the two songs, one has robust metadata set, the other one doesn't. One is discoverable, one's available for use in microservices, one can be monetized in a much greater way, more efficient way than the other, right? And so when we talk to artists, typically we're talking to them about how to maximize the value of their music. And I think this is just a part of the conversation. We need this information so that we can make your music available to all these different places and these different services, so that it can be distributed more broadly. You can get more exposure. That's sort of the language that we use to speak to artists with. And I think ultimately what incents them to think a little bit more clearly and closely about what information they're submitting to us as they're submitting music, and how we can help them, right? And so I think this is an important part of the conversation we have, but it's nuanced in how we have it. We typically will start to see eyes glaze over, even if we talk NFTs and technology too much to artists. And so we typically try to abstract that away and talk in terms that they want to hear and understand. And typically, like I said, it's it comes down to capital, and it comes down to reach and value of the work. And we use that as the leading sort of Trojan horse to have this deeper conversation about, okay, here's how we do those things, is these ways.
That's great. And Kyle, I don't want to skip you if you have any. I know I mentioned just the fact that you're breaking up the actual compositions a little bit, which I'm sure is a totally different conversation about education.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that a little bit too. I think it is a little bit different, I think, than like I said, than the kind of traditional metadata systems that we're used to, but it's something that we think is a potential unlock from Web3. It's kind of built around the ideas around composability and the power of composability. A good example of that is open source software, the open source software movement. So like the analog is that in the software world, people started to publish their code openly and allow other people to use it and build things on top of it. And people did so, and they would build things that were more powerful. They would build libraries, operating systems, browsers, and make that code available for reuse. And eventually, nowadays, developers have access to like this unbelievably powerful ecosystem that's just like of infinite code, essentially, that you can do almost anything you can imagine. You can search for it online and find an open source library that does it. And we kind of think about this and say, can we apply this to music, for music creators? Can we have a world where you listen to any song on Spotify, any song on Audius, any song on YouTube, and you can just click a button that lets you remix that song, and you have the legal rights taken care of, payments, royalties, splits, whatever, taken care of, handled by smart contracts or some other system. And yeah, it sounds like a dream, a faraway dream, but like we've kind of built a mini version of this ecosystem that's on chain and uses smart contracts to handle this attribution and like kind of this permissionless remixing is what we call it. And so that's kind of like the prototype. That's what we built at Arpeggi and kind of what we're working on expanding and fleshing out. And our thesis is that in the same way that open source software, started off as kind of a radical idea that goes against everything, that capitalism tells you about selling and owning your content. We think that hopefully we can prove that there's actually a model where sharing and collaborating openly with other artists and kind of letting your music free in a sense will actually be beneficial for the artist. It'll make them more well-known, and they can profit from their, they can earn an income and earn a living through like all kinds of new models that exist, whether selling NFTs, live performances, whatever it might be, while still letting people remix and reuse their stuff. So that's what we built at arpeggi.io. And yeah, I mean, again, it's not exactly related to metadata, but it is this kind of interesting new approach to collaboration and songwriting.
Yeah, and I think that goes over to what Ahmed was saying. It's that you're showing by example. You're showing what you can do with this right now and why it matters, and then people are getting paid clearly too.
Yeah,
which is
that's
great.
very important.
It's great for everyone.
I have a question for Kyle, just on this
Sure.
source music. Is as producer or artist submits track samples to Arpeggi, is there just the terms of use that says, this music is freely available to remix, or is there, how is that sort of initiated, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a terms of use, and there's a license agreement essentially that people release their music under. Right now, it's simply CC0, which is the most, the most open and free licensing terms that you can have.
Yeah.
In software, that's the equivalent of like the MIT license, essentially, which is basically saying you can use my code for whatever you want.
Got you.
And that's what we're doing right now. But ideally, this model can evolve, and we can start to answer some of the trickier questions and supports more complex right systems where people, are expected to profit from any time their music is used, or you have to re-register your songs back in to the system. Or we could use CC BY, which is saying that you have to provide attribution. You don't necessarily have to pay me when you use my stuff, but you at least have to give me attribution. So yeah, there's some options there.
Interesting. Yeah, no, we're thinking a lot about open source music as well, and what an ecosystem could look like, where any song that is heard could be not only remixed, but there could be UGC added to it, as a way to really showcase the cultural value of the song or music, right? So think about a song that gets uploaded to Spotify and then remixed on SoundCloud, and then there's a reaction video on YouTube. There's comments, on all these contributions, but they're all separate. What if they all resided in the same place, right? And you really get to measure the cultural impact of an inspiration that's provided by any piece of music. I think it's something that artists would love to see. And if you have to sort of own an NFT to be a part of the discussion by contributing in this way through not only remixing the song, but if you want to create fan art, that's inspired by it, or create a visualizer, that reacts to the music, that could be an interesting way to, again, attribute value back to the artist. You have to own an NFT. The NFT is linked to, it's all linked together in this content web. And I think, yeah, I mean, a CCO standard would be a really interesting way to accomplish that. So yeah, I may be following up with you after this.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Float was one of the early supporters of our Pudgy, so shout out to AJ and Float.
I'd like to say real quick, I've worked with Creative Commons a bit, and I've tried to get them involved in the NFT as well. And so DDEX has been on board, but Creative Commons so far, they're, I guess, a bit on the sidelines, but hopefully they will have a working group. We had a working group with AI, so I don't think there's any reason why we can't have a working group with NFTs. And I see some issues like Song and Dayman. He's said he doesn't really like CC0 because his identity is really involved in the music. So if someone synchronizes it to, say, like a political campaign ad or something like that, then it's tacitly saying that he agrees with that campaign. So for things like EDM stems, if it's like a drum line that people can't really recognize immediately, that drum or something like that, then it makes a bit more sense to do straight up CC0. But hopefully, yeah, CC will start to get more involved with the NFT community and kind of have more options, so that something like Arpeggio can have it so that sync license has to be something that is negotiated, but everywhere else, like as long as it's on chain and using on-chain system, then it is CC0. And it's really great for memes. Disaster Girl, she didn't make any money off of that meme, but because it's all public. But then with that NFT that said, well, this is the original, then suddenly she had a private version of it. And so there's this really great paradigm that we can pursue that is taking the best of what copyright provides, but not overly emphasizing the monopoly and kind of abusing monopoly like copyright has done in the past. So yeah, hopefully we can build out with Creative Commons. I'll keep working on that.
This is how we reach the utopia that is promised by Web3, right? Just a few back-end things to do. So I'm getting pinged that we're getting close to the end here. So I don't want to leave without having whomever's watching this not be able to follow up on what you guys are saying. I know we've already got maybe a little follow-up between Kyle and AJ. This is obviously going to be an ongoing problem that we're having to solve. Can you each let us know where people who are watching could connect with you, or what you're doing, especially as it relates to the future of metadata standards. Yeah, and I'll just let you go around. Yeah.
Sure, I'll go first. So yeah, people can follow us on Twitter at TeamFloat, TeamPhlote. They can also check out the site, float.xyz, phlote.xyz. And yeah, share music with us, earn tokens and be a part of the ecosystem. I would love to hear what you're listening to.
Awesome, thank you.
You guys can follow me on Twitter. I'd love to help with any projects, make any data sets available, help you re-implement code or anything like that. You can follow me on Twitter at Mutahadir, Mutahadir. And yeah, I'd just be happy to collaborate with anything. Part of a citizen developer group, and so advocacy for coding skills, general Web3 knowledge, any Web2 tech knowledge as well. I'd be happy to help personally. So yeah, feel free to reach out. You will get a response from me.
Amazing, thank you.
Cool.
Kyle?
Arpeggi is our Twitter handle, ARPEGGI. And you can also find me at KSD_ETH on Twitter. That'd probably be the best way to find me. Our website's arpeggi.io. And you can find our Discord information there if you'd like to join our Discord. I'd love to hear from you guys.
Same, thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, so myself, I'm Bestape on Twitter, so BESTAPE. And then the Web3 Music Coalition is Web3 Coalition on Twitter. And LexDAO is Lex_DAO, and DMs are open for all three.
Thanks, Kyle. And I suppose I should mention one more time, I'm with Water and Music. And again, we're doing a lot of research, collaborative research as the DAO on Web3 areas when it comes to music. That can be found at waterandmusic.com. Some of that is free content, some of that is paid membership content, but and you can also follow me at Brooke Jackson at Twitter, Jaxon. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciated the conversation, and I'm sure we'll keep it going offline. See you.
Thank you.